Fireground decision-making is one of the most critical leadership responsibilities within the fire service. The decisions made in the first few minutes of an incident often dictate operational effectiveness, firefighter safety, and victim survival outcomes. To provide a structured framework for these high-stakes decisions, the fire service has long relied on the LIP model: life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. This model gives incident commanders a prioritized decision-making structure to guide strategy and tactics. In recent years, integrating searchable space and savable lives, along with a victim profile into this model, has strengthened its operational effectiveness by aligning tactical actions with realistic survivability profiles and fire dynamics. We will discuss how the LIP model can be applied strategically to modern fireground operations, emphasizing searchable space and savable lives as key decision points that drive effective incident management. Life safety stands as the first and most critical component of the LIP model. It includes the protection of civilians, building occupants, and firefighters. The traditional approach to life safety emphasizes immediate rescue operations and rapid fire attack. However, contemporary fire behavior, research, and operational experience highlight the need for a more targeted and risk-informed approach based on the concepts of searchable space and savable lives. Searchable space refers to areas within the structure where conditions remain tenable enough for both victims and firefighters to survive and operate. These conditions are determined by assessing factors such as heat, smoke conditions, building layout, fire location, and rate of spread. Firefighters must evaluate which spaces can be reached quickly and safely to maximize the potential for successful search and rescue. Savable lives refers to identifying those occupants who can reasonably survive current and projected conditions. If lives are savable, more aggressive interior operations may be justified. If conditions are unsurvivable, the operational strategy must shift accordingly, as referenced in NFPA 1561. For example, if heavy fire involvement exists in sleeping areas during early morning hours, there may be a higher probability of savable occupants, justifying an interior push. Conversely, if conditions are fully involved with structural instability, the focus may shift to defensive operations. Strategic actions that support life safety include prioritizing search operations in tenable spaces, deploying attack lines between the fire and likely victim locations, coordinating ventilation and fire attack to extend tenable conditions, and establishing rapid intervention teams and accountability early. This structured approach allows incident commanders to make risk-based decisions rather than emotional or instinctive ones, aligning tactics with realistic survival outcomes. Incident stabilization, the second component of the LIP model, focuses on gaining control of the incident to prevent it from worsening. In fireground operations, this typically involves extinguishing the fire, controlling hazards, and limiting extension. However, stabilization is also a life safety multiplier. A well-coordinated fire attack and ventilation plan can improve interior conditions, making previously marginal spaces more searchable and increasing the number of savable lives. Incident commanders must choose between offensive, defensive, or combination strategies based on their size-up. Offensive operations involve committing interior crews to extinguish the fire when conditions permit. Transitional operations or an exterior water application is part of an offensive strategy that use an exterior knockdown to improve conditions before committing crews inside, often expanding searchable space. Defensive operations are chosen when conditions are untenable and structural integrity is compromised, prioritizing firefighter safety and exposure protection. A combination strategy incorporates both offensive and defensive strategies to identify locations of the building. Key stabilization actions include coordinating attack and ventilation to control interior conditions, positioning lines to protect egress routes and search teams, managing utilities and exposures to contain the incident footprint, and maintaining continuous size-up to adapt to changing fire dynamics. By viewing incident stabilization through the lens of searchable space, commanders can make decisions that not only control the fire, but also improve the potential for victim survival. The final component of the LIP model, property conservation, emphasizes minimizing loss from fire, smoke, and water damage once the incident is under control. While property conservation is often addressed later in the incident, it remains an integral part of the strategic picture. Salvage and overhaul operations help ensure no hidden fire remains, preserve evidence, and restore stability to the structure. Property conservation can also support life safety indirectly. For example, securing utilities and preventing rekindles reduces post-fire hazards to both occupants and firefighters. Coordinated salvage operations can protect critical building infrastructure, and methodical overhaul ensures no searchable areas are overlooked, as stated in NFPA 921. Effective property conservation demonstrates operational discipline and supports public trust in the fire service's mission. Incident commanders often make decisions in dynamic, time-compressed environments. Many rely on recognition prime decision-making, RPD, a cognitive model where experienced leaders rapidly identify patterns based on prior knowledge. Integrating searchable space and savable lives into this decision-making process helps ground these rapid decisions in evidence-based survivability factors rather than assumptions. Risk-benefit statements, as recommended in NFPA 1561, support clear, defensible decisions. We will risk a lot to save savable lives. We will risk little to save property, and we will not risk our lives to save what is already lost. This structured mindset helps maintain operational clarity, even in chaotic conditions. It also enhances crew coordination and accountability since all tactical objectives are tied back to strategic priorities under the LIP model. LIP provides a clear decision-making structure. Life safety dictates the urgency and type of operations, incident stabilization drives the control objectives, and property conservation influences the tactics and sequencing of operations. This structured approach ensures that command decisions are deliberate, risk-informed, and aligned with operational objectives, enabling crews to work in a coordinated and effective manner. If life safety is the primary concern and savable lives are identified in searchable space, an offensive strategy may be warranted to allow interior crews to search and rescue occupants quickly while attacking the fire at its seat. If conditions are marginal and immediate entry would place firefighters at unacceptable risk, a transitional strategy can be used to improve conditions from the exterior before committing crews inside. When there are no savable lives, or the structure is compromised, a defensive strategy may be necessary to prioritize firefighter safety and exposure protection. The LIP model not only establishes operational priorities, but also serves as a foundation for determining the most appropriate fireground strategy. Incident commanders must choose between offensive, transitional, or defensive strategies based on the conditions observed during the size-up and how these align with life safety objectives, incident stabilization requirements, and property conservation goals. Fireground decision-making requires a disciplined, prioritized approach that balances risk, resources, and expected outcomes. The LIP model, life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation remains a foundational framework in the fire service. By incorporating searchable space and savable lives, incident commanders can make more accurate, risk-informed decisions that directly influence survival outcomes and firefighter safety. Life safety guides the initial attack and search priorities. Incident stabilization builds on those efforts to control the hazard and improve survivability. Property conservation rounds out the response by ensuring the protection of assets and the prevention of further damage. Commanders who understand and apply these concepts with precision can lead more effective, efficient, and safer operations. Ultimately, this integrated decision-making model supports the fire service's core mission: protecting lives, stabilizing incidents, and conserving property. So, let's review the model and put it all together. When applying risk management or risk assessment to determine your strategy and tactics, you must first identify the incident priority. If you determine there is or are savable lives and searchable space inside the structure, then you would be in a life priority, and therefore an offensive strategy, and you would communicate your plan to responding units, which are the incident objectives. You would implement the correct tactics for your plan and assign the appropriate divisions and groups with tactical priorities. You would support the divisions and groups with engines and trucks so that each supervisor may have enough resources to complete the tasks required to support the incident commander's strategic plan. Let's now look at a couple examples and apply the Fireground decision-making model. The first thing we need to do is determine our incident priority. This is a one-story house with a fully involved attached garage. There is searchable space and potentially savable lives in the living space of the house. Therefore, we would be in a life priority and an offensive strategy. Our plan or incident objective would be to confine the fire to the garage and get an all clear of the living space. We would then implement the correct ICS structure with divisions and groups with tactical priorities, and then support those supervisors with companies who would then assign the correct tasks to the engines and trucks working for them at the task level. The incident commander must remember to stay at the strategic level and avoid making assignments at the task level. We would broadcast an overhead announcement that we are unable to search the garage due to heavy fire involvement and structural compromise. This would reinforce the message for targeting the search for the living space of the house and not including the garage from the start of the incident. The next picture is a medium-sized commercial building fully involved in fire. Since there is no searchable space or savable lives due to the large amount of fire involvement, we would be in an incident stabilization priority, and a defensive strategy would be indicated. Our plan or incident objective would be to confine the fire to the building of origin and protect all exposures. We would then implement the correct ICS structure with divisions and groups with tactical priorities, and then support those supervisors with companies who would then assign the correct tasks to the engines and trucks working for them at the task level. We would broadcast an overhead announcement that we are unable to complete a search of the structure due to heavy fire involvement and structural compromise. This would reinforce the defensive strategy and incident objectives. The incident commander must maintain a tactical reserve of resources to effectively manage the incident and support the tactical divisions and groups. The decision to complete the primary search of the structure would be determined when the fire was knocked down and if it was safe to do so. There is no reason to put firefighters inside the building if there is structural compromise and make the firefighters the life hazard. The last example is a one-story retail strip center, approximately 6 to 8 units with 2 end units at the Alpha Delta corner fully involved in fire. Since there are 2 units fully involved in fire, we would be in an incident stabilization priority and a defensive strategy for the units involved in fire. The remaining units to the left or Bravo side of the fire would be in a life safety priority and an offensive strategy. This incident would be an example of a combination strategy. The radio traffic for strategy and objectives announcement would sound like this. All units, we will be in a combination strategy. We will be defensive in the 2 end units at the Alpha Delta corner and offensive on everything to the left of the fire. The incident objectives would be confine the fire to the right side, 2 end units, and get an all clear and extinguish any fire to the left of the units involved. We would then implement the correct ICS structure with divisions and groups with tactical priorities, and then support those supervisors with companies who would then assign the correct tasks to the engines and trucks working for them at the task level. We would broadcast an overhead announcement that we are unable to complete a search of the two right side end units due to heavy fire involvement and structural compromise. This would reinforce the defensive strategy for this portion of the building and the incident objectives. Thank you for watching, and look for more training tip videos coming your way.